Hello everyone, welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to take a deeper look at vMix 28 Beta's new Telestrator feature. And we're going to show it in the context of a sort of tutor classroom preset inside of vMix that, could be used for sort of remote instruction. So this will sort of provide a framework for how we look at what we can do with the Telestrator. But before we get to this, I want to invite everybody, please, if you have any questions or comments, just post them and we'll try to get to everything here during the show. And also, if you'd like to join us by calling in, we do have a link here on the screen and in the show notes. So feel free and somebody will connect you and we can talk face to face. So let's get started. It was really nice when vMix released the 28 beta, because it's been something that we knew was coming since IBC basically, and they released it just over a week ago. So the key thing with this version, this release, is that vMix tends to have different styles of releases. Some of them are sort of feature rich but keep the basic underpinnings pretty stable. And this release is sort of the other. It has Telestrator as its big release feature, but it has a lot of other underlying updates that I think make vMix better overall. So this is a really nice update coming out. And I'm excited to where it goes as it fleshes out. So for today's show, what we'd like to do is basically show a preset that we set up, which is a classroom preset, which has a teacher and a sort of a green board that we can write on, post questions, display images, and telestrate all of this. So this gives us sort of a good framework as we explore each of the features in context that Telestrator has to offer. And at the end of the show, we can wrap up and talk about any of the other vMix 28 beta features that we want to get into, ask questions. I'd be happy to talk about my experience with it all so far. So let's actually get started, and we'll sort of dive in here. And the way I have this preset organized is that we have in the upper right in the program out, you're seeing we have a background and a teacher and then a sort of green board with text that's already on it. So if we look at the way this is set up in the preset, we have a background for the classroom. In this case, it would be a camera in normal use, but this is just a video I have looping for the teacher. And then in the classroom input, what I've done is I've layered a set of elements. So let me sort of jump in here and we should be able to see this. So I have my classroom background. I have the teacher camera, which in this case is just a video. I have the writing board, and that's just this green space behind it that we use to put anything above that. Then I have Mix 2, and what this Mix 2 is doing is it has either information that's being pulled from a title that has all of the, sort of this, in this case, the math equations that we have here and the diagram there, or I could switch it over and actually have images there. So this means that based on what I'm teaching and how I'm sort of going through a lesson, I can move between sort of image-rich things or text-rich things. And the other element that I have in this is I have the ability to basically turn the mix layer on and off, basically what's in the mix. So I can effectively hide this text and just draw on it as an open space. So we sort of set this up as a very flexible sort of learning palette that we can work against. And then the last one we have here is this one for writing. And writing is the Telestrator. So that's the input that we're taking that's being fed by the Telestrator, which if you sort of look in the upper corner here, this is the interface for the Telestrator that we'll be working with here. So that's the basic core of how we have this lesson structure set up. And you can see these are the different notes. The writing, again, as I mentioned, is the Telestrator. This is my text display. This is my image display. And then I have the mix, which lets me select which one of those two I have there. And that just makes it easier if I'm sort of moving in a lesson to keep both of them active and be able to switch between them easily. Then there's a couple of other things that we have here, but the main one here is what is the video or image that I want to return to the Telestrator? And we'll get into that as we set up the Telestrator, but you want to provide something in your Telestrator that isn't sort of the full screen. If I don't want to have people writing on the face of the teacher or scribbling notes on the side, I wanted to have something going back to the Telestrator, which reflected just this space right here that we'd actually be interacting on. And so we created a separate output that we feed to the Telestrator for that. So since we sort of touched on that, let me go into how we would set up the Telestrator. But actually, before I do that, we have a lot of comments here, so I want to make sure we touch on that first. So spatial, always good to hear from you, spatial. Yeah, I think the vMix folks are very, very open to suggestions and things to upgrade. So hopefully as I work more, I'll be able to make some suggestions to them as well. And your feedback is important to that as well. So any ideas any of you guys have, just let me know, and we'll see what we can feed back to the folks at vMix. So Kyle, hello. Thank you for joining. Good to see you here. So Jesper, hi, how are you? Thank you for joining. William, hello. Good to see you here. Thank you, William. Miodrag, hopefully I said that correctly. Thank you for joining us from Romania. Great to have you here. Biz, how are you? Good to see you here again. Yes, and the Pythagorean theorem. I promise I won't do too much math or geometry here, so we'll be okay. All right. So let's dive back into this. So the way Telestrator works is it's driven from a browser interface. So no special plugins, no separate applications. It is running as a browser-based connection. And vMix has had that all along, with the ability to trigger things, to switch, to do other things through a browser. And that is in their web settings. So if we go into the vMix preset here, and I go into settings in the upper right-hand corner, you can go down and you see web controller sitting here. And if I click on web controller, here's where you'll see, first you have to make sure it's enabled so you can connect. And this is the IP address of the web controller. That's where you'll go in and be able to start to do things. But they have now some things that are specific for the Telestrator. So first you have to activate it. So there's a checkbox here that tells you, okay, let's go ahead and activate the Telestrator. Then you're going to have to say, what video source do I want to send back to the Telestrator? And at what quality do I want to send it back? Normally, the quality is not going to be significantly important because you're really using it as a proxy for doing your telestration, for drawing, diagramming, highlighting. So, I would say find something that makes that easy for the remote operator to work with, but there's no need to use, an excessively high bandwidth. It's not going to improve anything overall in the overall video quality that you'll be sending back. So the way we had this set up is I use output 2 from vMix as my return feed for the Telestrator. And the reason I do that is because, as I mentioned before, I want to be able to just focus in on sort of this green board area that we have. And so in doing that, there's a couple of things that are important here. So this is everything you need, by the way, to set up to go there. And all you're going to do is you will connect through a browser to this URL here on that port. So that's all you'd need. But that should have you set up for everything you'd need there. So the way I have this set up for the return, so let me sort of jump into here. That's input number 9 over here. So if I go here and I look this up, I'm setting up Mix 2 coming in, which is sort of the video that we have that has this overlay with the Pythagorean theorem, as Biz pointed out, or the images that we have. And the base input that I have is basically just the this green board, which is my background. So this is what I have coming back into the Telestrator. And that's really all I need. I don't need to have everything else, but this gives me all the flexibility. So if the mix gets turned off or any of that happens, you see exactly what's being displayed on screen, but you're not seeing anything extra, and it lets you focus on where you want to telestrate. So we have that set up there. Then the other point is when I return this image, which is coming in through this writing input here, input number 5, when I have that set up, one of the things that you'll see here is that I actually have this cropped in and sized down to exactly the right size. So when I'm drawing over this full image on the Telestrator, that is being constrained specifically to that area of the screen here that is coming back. So it reflects exactly the space that's going to be displayed on screen, and it's fit exactly over this green board that I have as a backdrop. So this, again, is to keep in mind. It just makes it a cleaner way to execute this. So if I was doing this full screen, you'd want to have it obviously covering, one-to-one resolution and covering everything. But because we're doing it inside of a multi-box shot, that makes it, work inside a region of the screen there. So that's how we have that set up. And I am running this on the Telestrator component on a standard iPad, just in a browser, and I'm using a pencil to do the telestration here. But this gives you a phenomenal touchscreen for doing everything. So let me talk a little bit about how this is set up. So you can see here's a shot of what we have here. Let me turn the drawing back on. One of the features you have is the ability to turn drawing off and on. So if I want to, and I'm not going to be doing anything with the Telestrator, I can just turn drawing off, and that way, if I do anything, nothing gets on the screen. But here's the basic layout. So this is what I'm seeing that's coming back. That's that return feed that's coming in. Across the row underneath that, I have a set of functions. I have a pen that lets me do sort of freestyle drawing. So if I wanted to, here, I think drawing's on. I could go in here and, circle or highlight anything, remind people what they need to do, other things like that. And I then have the ability to just clear that out by touching the trash can. I also have the ability to do things that are not just freehand. I can go and say I wanted to draw a box around this. I could just go in here and say, okay, now we have a nice clean box that goes around the image that I put there. I could equally do something where I'm doing a circle to highlight, the right angle in the triangle there. I can also put images or different types of numbers. So in this case, I actually sort of scroll this up. I have a couple of images that I added, which you can add in the Telestrator custom one. So if I wanted to turn around and say, gee, here's a little Streaming Alchemy icon, I can just put that in when I need it. And the other thing that you have, because I showed you have the trash can here, which lets you clear the entire screen. But you also have sort of a go back on the stroke. This doesn't always work the way you would expect, but it does a pretty good job of taking things off that are sort of atomic, where it's a box or a circle or an image that you put on there. It'll pull that all off directly. So you have that ability as well. You also have the ability to put numbers on things. So if I wanted to go, as I was talking and saying, you have, one side of the rectangle, then you have the second side, and this is the hypotenuse over here. I could do that, and that would be, a pretty clean way. And you notice that it bounces up, so it's going from 1 to 2 to 3 automatically. I didn't have to do anything. However, if I wanted to change that, so let me give you a good example. Say I just numbered those things, and then I wanted to go in and sort of highlight something in here by drawing it. So I can turn and say, this is the right angle that we're dealing with. So I just put a little circle around that. If I go back to the numbers again by clicking on this, it goes back to 1. Now, I'm not sure that's a great default, but all you have to do is you can just tap on it multiple times, and it will get you up to the number that you want. So then if I wanted to turn around and put the number 4 here for the equation, I could do that without, having to sort of mess everything up. So you can make it work for these types of things, but it isn't necessarily, ideal if you're using the numbering. So I think that may be something that I would be suggesting to them in the future, that changing the way you work with numbering so you can reset it if you want easily, but this would be, it stays default even if you go off to another function on it. So let me clear that. The other element that this has, which is very, very useful, is it has basically a laser pointer. So if I wanted to go in here and start to explain things, I could go in and sort of point to things directly on the screen. And in the output, you see that it's actually following along. So as I'm looking at the output that's coming in, that's just sort of be what the teacher would be showing students. You can actually do this. And when you're talking, then you can be actually pointing to what you want. So that's sort of the basic functionality here. You do have the ability to change the latency. So right now it's normal. If I needed it to be low latency, I could, which means the image would refresh faster, possibly with lower quality, because you sort of trade off quality against latency. I can turn the video off and on if I want. And as I mentioned before, I can turn drawing off and on, so you can prevent yourself from touching the screen accidentally. One of the really powerful things that's in this, though, is if you look across the bottom here, I have the ability to assign shortcuts to the Telestrator, which means that if I were operating this as a teacher, I could do almost everything from here without touching the vMix preset as an interface. So I could be sitting here and I could turn around and say, I actually want to go to the next equation that I have here. So, I have drawing on. Okay. So so go to the next as previous, and the next. So I got images and text. I could go and say, let me go to the next text, and that's another geometric equation, go to the next. And I can do everything here. So I could turn off the overlay now and sort of say, okay, now I want to actually diagram this out and sort of, let me get something that's drawing and explain, with the triangle, what I'm going to do. So whatever, I'm not going to pretend my drawing is anything to envy when it's up on an angle here. But and then when I'm done with that, I can just turn back and go back in and start to talk more about the lesson element that I have there. And that can work the same for images and text. So as I said, I can switch between the image and the text. So if I were doing this diagrammatically, then I can go to previous images. So sort of jumping between biology and geometry, two great subjects that go great together. But this gives me all of these same capabilities. And this can be something, especially where the laser pointer could be really helpful, because if you are trying to do things where you're trying to identify things in a diagram of some kind, having that ability to do that would be great. So some of the things that I've seen, I would love this to be variable in size. And I'd also love it to be an outer ring circle or a square. So if I wanted to highlight something, say I want to highlight this whole region, I could just have a larger open circle or something like that where I could put it on there and move that around. So there'd be some nicer things that I'd like to see in how the pointer element would work, but I could definitely see this being very useful, in these type of situations. Now, how do you decide which elements, which shortcuts go on the bottom of your Telestrator interface? Because this really is the key power. You can operate here as a teacher or as somebody in sports, if this is your telestration is your sole role as a color commentator, where this could be your only interface and you could do everything that you'd want from this. So, but how do you set those up and how do you order them? So for that, we have to go back to the vMix interface over here. And when we go into settings and we go into our shortcuts, let me go over here and sort of have the ones here. So these are the shortcuts that I have set up for this Telestrator. And if we go into this, you'll notice at the bottom that it says, do you want to show it in the web controller and do you want to show it in the Telestrator? So this is going to tell you, I want this in my Telestrator. And if I turn it off, it will disappear from my Telestration interface. So this lets you say what you want to show in it. In order to set these things in order, it follows the exact order that you have here. So say I wanted to have my my previous and next images. Say I wanted to move my next text so it's right next. So when I switch to my image or text, I can go to the next text item or the next image item. That will all happen where I set this up just by the ordering here. It'll change over in my Telestrator. Now, let me just click here. In order for that to take effect, you have to refresh. And for some reason, it keeps asking for a login. Let me do that again. Sorry. Okay. So now you'll see if you go back into looking at the Telestrator interface, you'll see that the way I have the Telestrator setup, let me see if I can just jump over here. Yeah, so now I have next image and next text right next to selecting between image and text. So it means it's a shorter jump for me to go between the things in the text and the next things in the images. So again, this is the sort of thing where not only can you control what shortcuts you have, but you can organize them the way you'd want to have this all set up. And I think that is really a very slick way to do these types of presentations or educational things. And, this is something I definitely could see using for some of the things we do here on the show, especially if we're looking at anything in the hardware space where I'd want to be able to call out specific features, specific ports, things like that. We've done shows around that before, and I think that could be very, very useful this would be a very, very useful tool for doing that and just sort of integrating that into the show. So that's really everything that I want to talk about in the Telestrator itself, but there's a lot of other things that we can touch on. But let me get back. There's a lot more comments here, so I want to make sure we get to everybody. So Tom, good to see you. Thank you for joining. And by the way, I will get back to you about that scripting question. I was just looking at it yesterday, and it will be something I'll get back to you very shortly on. So thank you for watching. Ton 8 Live. Hello from Connecticut. Thank you. Great to see you here. Thanks for joining. Bill Ashton. Bill, thank you. Great to see you here. Michael, no worries with the late arrival. Always great to have you here. Thanks for joining. So can you talk about how to embed your own graphics? So yeah, Michael's asking how we did the graphics here. So let me actually, I can jump into that. Let me just finish the comments and we will, I'll get into that right away then after that. Okay. So yeah, so this is Biz. This is vMix 28 beta. It is available now. It has this as sort of its built-in big feature upgrade for this release. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff you can do with this, and I think it's only going to get better because this is sort of all the basics for a Telestrator. But I think there's a lot of room to grow, and this is going to be a really awesome feature over time. Okay, so. Michael was asking about how did we set everything up for to put custom images and other things into the Telestrator. So to do that, all you have to do is I can slide this. Let me just slide this on top of the vMix screen so I can show this here. So inside of your PC that you have vMix installed on, you'll have your documents folder, and there is a folder there called vMix storage. And with vMix 28, they added another folder under that called Telestrator. And all you have to do is drag PNG images with transparency into this folder. They can be up to 1920 by 1080, I believe, but they can make them any size. And when you just put them into here, what you'll find, let me sort of slide this out of the way. What you'll find if you look at the Telestrator, let me see if I can put the Telestrator UI over here, is that if I click over here, you now have the elements just appear down there. So not only can you use them, so let's sort of take the neural net logo, not only can you use them, you can size them any way you want as you put them in. One of the things you can't do is there's no way to move something after you do it. So the temptation, especially when using images, because you sort of are not putting them exactly where you think, you're sort of going from a corner and it's growing, is you think you can touch it and sort of move it around, and you're just going to go over yourself and not necessarily get what you want. But this is, this gives you an easy way to do that, and then you can just sort of change them around if you're doing things and just put them where you want. If you just, unlike the numbers, which come in at a fixed size, if you just do this and tap it, you're just going to get a teeny tiny little image there, which is not really helpful. So this just, you have to really, when you drag your own images out, you have to decide what size you want. You can slide them in and out until you get it exactly right, but you can't move it around once you sort of release your finger or the pencil from the touch surface for that. Okay, so why don't we do the following? We'll wrap up the main show here, and I'll go into the post show, and I'll show you a few more things in the post show that we have in vMix 28, because there are a number of additional sort of foundational features that I think are really, really cool that I do want to share with everybody. So, and then, we'll go in and continue answering all the comments. So we'll be back in just a moment. If you can't join us for our next show, if you can't join us for the post show, we'll see you in the next show. Otherwise, I'll just see you in a few. Thanks. All right, welcome back to the Post Show, everyone. So Michael was asking, in the short time that I've had this, do I get the feeling it can be animated graphics too? So right now, it just accepts PNG files, as far as I know. I haven't really, played much with it, but I think they are going to be doing a lot more with this. And after I show some of the additional features in the vMix 28 beta general features, I'm going to come back and talk about some of the things I really like and some of the things I would love to see changed in the telestration feature. And, basically, I'd love any of your feedback as well. So actually, let me jump back to the first thing that I really would like to cover, which is things that can show up in the interface here. So if I go back to the vMix interface, we'll sort of swing over in our post-show screen here. One of the things that they've added is the ability to sort of change how you have in your audio mixer, what you get to see with, sorry, let me see this. I have this set up. I don't have everything set up for this, but you would be able to, instead of just seeing your master bus A, bus B, you can have this set up so that it will let you see all of your buses up to G. So they're just smaller buttons in 2 rows, I think of 4 here, that will show all of the audio buses. But one of the other things that it has, and again, we'll sort of focus first on the audio. The audio, you can add now. Oh, sorry, picked on the wrong thing. Let me add an input. And if I go and I say, I want to add an audio input, one of the things you can do is you now have the ability to take in application audio. So I can either take in the full Windows audio, or I could go in and say, I want to get audio from one of my applications. And then I can pick all my open applications and say, which one of these do I want to get the audio from? Very, very cool. And if you can also take system audio, which is down here. And when you take system audio, it automatically removes the vMix audio so you don't have sort of a loop back on yourself. So this lets you bring in the system audio into vMix as well. Great for doing demos. And this is excellent because with telestration, it's something that would be very cool to do for product demos, where you want to go through and do a product. And if you had audio in the product, you could now capture that and play that out. And I think that really works perfectly with having telestration in this. So Michael was asking, is it possible to access the Telestrator over the internet? There isn't a sort of a native way, but clearly this is something you could do with port forwarding. I have not set this up, but you'd have to understand the latency latency that would be involved with working over the native internet, but it would definitely be something networking wise that you could configure, doing port forwarding in your router and then using that IP address and port, the external IP address and the port you assign to that port forward to forward it into this Telestrator component that you get the address from. And so Biz is saying, I see this as using web controller and it has to be on the same network. So Biz is asking basically the same question. So yes, you can do this. You could do this through doing port forwarding, and we've actually done that with the web interface, the web controller interface in vMix in the past. So we know that connection works. The latency die on the video would be the only issue, but my guess is that there's not a lot of uplink traffic where you would send from the Telestrator, because it really isn't high motion video or anything like that. So you probably wouldn't have any latency or jitter with what you would be sending. You may have some things with what you're receiving and telestrating over, but as we mentioned, that's really just reference video for you. So if it's good enough for you to do what you need to, it should probably work pretty well for you. So Yeah, so Michael's saying about the adding audio. So that is definitely one of the cool things that has been added. And like I said, it goes really well with telestration because it's great for demos and other things like that. There's one other thing that was added. It really resolves the need for a virtual audio cable when you're doing that, unless you're feeding this audio from vMix into something else that is expecting that as a local. Marco, good to see you. Great to have you back here. Thank you for joining. So the other thing is there's a new shortcut in vMix here. Let me get my notes for this stuff so I make sure I say it. They have now set bus volume fade. And what this will do is it lets you take any of the buses, A, B, C, D, master bus, and say, I want you to fade to 0 over this amount of time. And so you can do that now as a shortcut. So as opposed to just muting something, you could fade it out and then, set it to a level and, unmute it to pull somebody back in. So a nicer way to handle things, especially if you're working with, dialogue and you don't want to just have hard cuts. You can sort of, if you're doing scripting or other things, this would be a nice way of somebody else is talking and you trigger a script to gently fade somebody else out that may have been talking previously and sort of move back and forth. So real nice cases for that with the audio. The other thing, which let me show as well, is something that was added into this version of vMix for triggers. And if you know what triggers are, they're something that when a certain action happens. So let me go into this because this is my timer trigger. When something happens inside of, like some condition happens, you can turn around and trigger some other action to happen. So in this case, they've added a new trigger, 2 new triggers actually, called on playback time and on playback remaining, which allow you, when you have a video playing, to say, after this many seconds into the video, do this. Or when there's this many seconds remaining in the video, do this. So this gives you a different way. You really couldn't do this any other way before, of triggering specific actions that you want to have take place based on where you are in a video segment that's playing. So I have this set up where I'm doing things that are basically working with the images that we have set up here. So let me show you how this would work in this case. So let me go back and go to sort of the first image here so we can start this. Now, if I play this video, and this is really just a clock looping around, what will happen is every 5 seconds, it'll move to the next image. So it's basically saying, move to the next image in my image playlist as this video is playing. This means that if I wanted to do something where I had specific elements that were going to display based on where you were in an audio or a video, so anything that's playing back, this could work really well. So it could be something that could trigger things for lyrics or graphics that you wanted at certain times with some video or audio that was playing, and do all that. And so I did it so that for the first half, it's switching with every 5 seconds left, every 5 seconds in, and then it starts to switch down with every 5 seconds left. So that's all I did to make sure I could show both of them. One of the things it does not do, which would be nice, is when you get to 0, it doesn't trigger anything on that end one. So you can't really set it up to have that last one. You've got to do that on video end or something. So, it'd be nice if you could just do it that way. But this gives you that, and it's a very, very powerful new function inside of vMix for this. So what else is there? Well, we have this screen on. So one of the other things, again, very useful, especially for those of us that use NDI, is in the statistics. If you look down here, there's a little bar chart sort of icon here. You can actually look at details about what's coming in, but it will also now show you details about your encoders and decoders and where they are, things like drop frames, frame rates, and other things that are taking place. And if you do, as you can see, NDI, like we do here, this gives you a great view into what's going on. And if you have issues, it'll show up here in either deprecated frame rates or in numerous drop frames. So this will give you a great way of seeing if there's an issue. And let's face it, in a live situation, having any tool that can help debug something that is not working the way you expect is definitely great. So the other thing is for streaming. If you go here, you now have in streaming 5 encoders that are available. And I think some of this is, if you're using Nvidia hardware, the latest updates to their consumer software allow you to have now up to 5 encodes that could be going on. So if you're not using encoding for other things, for recording or other things, you could actually just do hardware encoding for all of your streams out. But this means you can now stream to 5 different potential destinations using vMix. It used to be 3 before, but this lets you set all of that up now in using vMix without having to go to an outside sort of restreaming service if you want to do it this way. So this, just keep in mind though, if you're setting this up, this will require bandwidth, uplink bandwidth for each one of your streams. So if you're streaming at 10 megabits going up, that's going to be 50 megabits for each of your destinations that you have to accommodate in your uplink bandwidth. So just keep that in mind as you sort of add these. But it's definitely nice to have that. One of the other things, actually, let me show you because I think I have this here. I'm gonna just open up a. Let's see if I can just. I will discard changes. Don't need them. Yeah, this is a Flatten Layers. It's pretty cool because it's basically. So let me just show this. What Flatten Layers will do is. It's easier to show than to. So this is something that I just set up as a quick Christmas scene here. And so if you look at these here, so this is an output that I have. If I were to have this composited in here, and I wanted to go in here, and let me go to layers, and say I wanted to go in here and I wanted to crop. If you see, I'm not cropping anything. And the reason I'm not cropping anything is because this is a composite where I have flattened layers coming in here, and there is just a transparency underneath it. These flattened layers, let me sort of pop out of here. If we go in here, are basically, there's just this image here, which is sort of a transparent PNG, and this image here, which is just this video of snowflakes falling. And when I put them together here, I have the 2 layers, one on top of the other, and the background is just a transparency. Since the way cropping traditionally works is it just takes your base layer and crops it. And what Flatten Layers will let you do, if I come in here and say, when I have the Flatten Layers turned on, so sorry, put it in the wrong spot. In general, if I turn Flatten Layers on, what it will do in the background is basically feed them to a hidden mix in the background, push all these things together. So if I then go over here to switch and I want to do the cropping that we were trying to do before. So let me sort of go into layers, edit this. Now you'll see that the cropping will work and it's taken out because these layers were all flattened together. And that's all happening in the background. So it's something you could do with Mix with mix inputs, but this just gives you a seamless way to do this. And if you're doing these types of things where you want to composite different elements, this can be really handy. So I just wanted to sort of touch on that. So what else is there that came in here that I think is really useful? Let's see. So now you actually can have multiple multi-view setups. Let me sort of go in here to general settings. Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing. I'm just trying to think of what else I want to say. So you do have multiple multi-views that you can set up now, and you can assign multi-views specific inputs, including mixes as opposed to just composited layouts. So that can be really useful as you work with this. What else is there? And there's also additional data about your output. So inside of when you have your settings and you go in and set up all these outputs, information about what's assigned here is now available in your vMix XML, your API XML, and you can use that in scripting. So that's pretty cool. You do have the ability to change these things dynamically through shortcuts, and now you have the ability to read the state through scripting. So that could be very handy where if you wanted to, based on what an output was, decide to change it to something different. Like if you want to toggle between things, you could now do that because you'd know what was in the output. So that's really everything that we have in the mix in the new vMix beta. There are more things, updated SRT, new NDI 6, but they're not really things that are going to have a visible difference. They're just sort of technical updates for that. So Bill is saying restream is safe. Yeah, I mean we probably wouldn't want to go with having that many streams up, just unless we had more reliable internet. So Dave is saying you actually have the option for 8 encoders on Nvidia cards, and that's what he's getting with 10.6. I'd have to look at that. That would be phenomenal, actually. That is a great update because you hate to have to use hacks because I always like to be sort of square with the vendors we use. So the fact you can do this without hacking drivers or doing anything is fantastic, and that's. We're getting into where it actually can work for everything you want to do in vMix. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. So yeah. So Biz is talking about the flatten layers. So this does make it a lot easier because the ways were always you either use a mix or you sent it as an output and you sent it back in and read the output as an NDI input and worked from that, but that added latency. So yeah, it's nice to have that, and it is a much cleaner way to do it. But the fact you can turn it on or off means you're not adding load to the system for cases where you don't need it. So it was really a very good choice making that as a per input checkbox as opposed to just the general capabilities all on or all off. So definitely like that. So yeah. So Dave, yeah, thank you, because I was right clicking. I just don't have any extra buses set up here in the show vMix setup, and that would reboot vMix. So I didn't want to do that in the middle of the show. But yeah, if you right click on the M in this case for the mix buses, you get to look to say show all of them. And you can do that as well as just turn on individual ones, which you could sort of work with in the past if you want to route. So yeah. So Biz, I'm glad this was useful, and so thanks for tuning in for this. But I'm expecting that there's going to be a lot more improvements. So to wrap up, let me just share some of the things that I would really like to see inside of the Telestrator, because that was the one feature that we spent a lot of time with. I would like it if it could actually help straighten drawing. So like if you put your pen down and sort of move across. If you would try to straighten your line, so like every shake in your hand, especially if you're working at an odd angle, like at a slant or something where it's not a natural angle for you to write, so that your lines could be a little more fluid. I would also like if it had things where you could have like arrows, where if I wanted to start at a point and drag out an arrow to a point, that would be really useful, diagrammatically if I'm showing how something would move or operate. I would also like even if it's for just the last element, if when you put an element up there, you would then have the ability to move it on screen. And that could be something where you could turn around and when you put something up, you could touch it again and move it. But then after X number of seconds, after 5 seconds or whatever, it would freeze and whatever you had. So something where you could have a little more interactive control, especially if you're trying to highlight or circle or do things like that. That would be really good. And I think the default for the numbers, I think, should be you stick at the last number, but I have the ability to sort of like press to reset it, something like that, where I could go back and reset it to 1 as opposed to jumping back to 1 when you do the numbering every time I switch to another tool. Because I could see those, you'd really want to use numbers interactively with boxes or freehand text. But I think that would be some of the things I'd love to see. Also, as you think of some of the things that are in, higher end telestrators, I'm not sure that you could really do all that from a browser, but just some of these core things, if it would be possible to do that, I'd love to see it. That would just be really nice. And it's, as it is now, it's got, a lot of functionality, a lot of real use case, and I just see more as it matures. So let's see. So Michael's saying, to compare the new StreamOut, how powerful is your graphic card? What's needed? Also do replay and recording. Yeah, I think that, so it's really going to be based on how many different things you're doing and how many different things leverage your graphics card. I don't think telestration in and of itself is a big deal in terms of graphic card load. For streaming and doing multiple encodes, as long as you're doing hardware encoding, that's sort of baked into the card. And so you can even do that on lower end cards as long as, they have the general hardware capacity to do the number of encodes you're asking. But when you start to do instant replay, especially if you're doing, multi-channel instant replay, where you say you had like 4, to sort of do a basic one, 4 inputs, all of those have to be encoded and recorded, and then they have to decode and play back. So that's where you're going to need higher end cards. I would definitely look at, based on, balancing between encodes versus raw performance. If the encodes are more important, I would probably go with the RTX A line, which used to be their Quadro line. So cards like the RTX 4000, which is what we use on this system here, that's probably like $1,000 card. But it is probably in the neighborhood of a 3060 or 3070, somewhere in that. So it's not the most powerful card in the mix. And, if you're going to do more around just GPU demand, then that would be something that I'd probably focus more on, doing the 4000 or soon the 5000 series, which should be coming out, which do have, encodes, hardware encodes, but not sort of the unlimited. So you have more limitations that way. But those cards, 40,000, 4000 series cards can be, the 4090s are in the $2,000 price range. So they can be much more expensive. So if you're going into that, you have more options for things like the RTX A5000, which has more memory, slightly higher processing. Not dramatically though. You're still not in the same class, but so it's very difficult to give you a sort of a move, a decision point between the two. It's really going to be based on the specifics of the types of productions, but that's really the balance between the two price wise. So yeah, and so after the show, please just any things you're looking at that you want to know about the vMix 28 beta, or any suggestions for things you'd like to see in it, just keep posting them. You can DM me, on Facebook, or just post them in comments, and I'll be happy to follow up. And I do plan on putting something together for the folks at vMix to say these are things that I've looked at and think could be implemented while adding a lot of capability to it. And I'm always sensitive that as since we are a software company, I know it's very easy to suggest features, most of which are, when we get them, are not as easy to implement. So I always try to be sympathetic to that and suggest things that I think are more implementable in the short term, even if I suggest things that may be more complicated to do and for longer term. But definitely we'll share that with them. So Biz is saying, I was using EpicPen, NDI, and OBS into vMix to create a Telestrator. Worked well, but the great thing about this is this works with just a browser. So not only can you could just use this with an iPad and a finger, you could use it with your iPhone. So you could sort of sit there and go, yeah, I'm just going to take and, just draw on this and, do that for things I want to do, really quickly. One thing I haven't tried is, but because this is something that runs across the browser, and it'd be a lot of fun to try this, it may be possible to have this open on multiple browsers. So I'll have to give that a shot and see if you could have two people interacting with the screen at the same time. So that's something I'll have to try. I should have tried that before the show. Didn't think about it. But so that'd be something. And again, all these cool types of things that come up. But yeah, Biz, it's definitely cool. So Jesse, we need to connect again. It's been too long. So thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving. Great to have you here. All right. So on that note, I would like to wish everybody, if you do celebrate Thanksgiving like we do here in the States, have a great, relaxing holiday with family and friends. And, if you don't, it's a great celebration of remembering all the things we should be thankful for. So I think even if it isn't an official holiday, wherever you live, it's a good thing. It's a good reminder for us to appreciate everything that we have in our lives that we are grateful for. So until the next show, hopefully it'll be sooner. I know this was a long time between shows, but hopefully we'll have at least one more show before Christmas, and we have some exciting stuff going on. We are going to be doing a new set redesign, so we're changing everything physically. We're changing how we have things running on the production. So a lot of new things that will be going on over the next couple of months, and we will record and share all of that with you as part of season 5 when we start that the beginning of next year. So until the next show, be safe, be well, everybody. Take care.